How should academic research be carried out? Many of you may be asking this exact question. Hello, my name is Abigail King, and today I'll be discussing how to properly carry out academic research. While there are many strategies used to effectively complete academic research, the basic points one must understand are how to avoid unnecessary or inaccurate sources, how to choose relevant, credible sources which relate to the topic, and how to properly use sources to accurately relay information. Today, I'm going to talk about all three of these in depth. Avoiding inaccurate sources. Here are some steps you can take to identify fake news outlets. Fake news is quite common, and it's important to avoid it at all costs when conducting academic research. So how do you know if a source is fake news? Well, one logical way to identify fake news outlets is to look for fallacies. The formal definition of a fallacy is a mistaken belief, especially one based on an unsound argument. Fallacies are unsound, and thus they're non-accurate. Let's look at a couple examples. In this cartoon, we see that the cat says that since chairs have 4 legs and she has 4 legs, then she's a chair. The cat came to this conclusion through using a hasty generalization, but we know she's not actually a chair. In this other cartoon, the dog assumes that because he ate a treat and had to go to the vet, then it was because he ate the treat he had to go to the vet. He used a faulty causality, which led him to this conclusion. Fallacies prove that sources are inaccurate, and thus they're fake news. They only consider pieces of the evidence and not the whole picture. There are also other clues that can help you determine if your source is fake news. First, you can look for grammar mistakes. If sources appear to not have been properly edited, then there's a good chance they're from fake news. Let's look at this example. Mastitis in dairy cattle can be very bad for the dairy industry, causing millions of dollars in losses, putting them in the hole. It's evident that there are quite a few grammar mistakes. First, dairy and whole are misspelled, millions is improperly capitalized, and the sentence ends with a cliche. It's evident that this sentence is most likely from a fake news outlet. Another way you can determine if your source is fake news is by looking for facts not supported by data. This shows that the facts are not accurate, and thus your source is probably fake news. It's also good to avoid any personal opinion essays which might counteract your proven research. Look at this sentence. All dairy farmers should use Jersey cattle because they're clearly the best milk producers. It's evident that this is a personal opinion and is not a proven fact. If you're still unsure as to whether or not your source is fake news, you can find similar sources and compare the information. Let's look at 3 different articles. Staphylococcus aureus, a chronic mastitis pathogen. Staphylococcus aureus, Streptococcus tuberous, mastitis pathogens causing severe disease. And chronic mastitis pathogens treatment and prevention. Upon reading all 3 of these articles, you can determine that one fact is across all 3. Staphylococcus aureus causes chronic mastitis. It's pretty evident that because all 3 of these articles hold this fact, that it is most likely accurate, and thus the sources are most likely not fake news outlets. In science-based sources, it's important to look at the data presented. Make sure the sample size is large, covering much of a population. Methods are accurate and data isn't skewed. Let's look at these 2 samples. On this first one, we see that the test sample is from 4 animals from 1 farm. It's pretty evident that this data might not be accurate. In this other study, we see that there are quite a few animals from 12 farms in the United States. It's pretty evident that this source would most likely not be from a fake news outlet, while the source with only 4 cows from 1 farm would probably be inaccurate. One last way to avoid fake news is to use only what you need. Avoid fake news through using sources which are necessary to your points and topic. When looking for sources, only find those that will be valuable to your topic. Don't research Staphylococcus aureus and look up Streptococcus tuberous instead. It's just going to lead you to more fake news outlets. Choosing credible, relevant sources is extremely important to academic research. Here's how you can refine your search and determine credibility. It's highly important to use credible, relevant sources when relaying information. So how do you find those sources? You need to refine your search. You can use search engines to find relevant sources online, such as NC Live or Google Scholar. These are great ways to find sources that are extremely relevant to your topic of choice. You can also use resources at your school or county library, such as the Haywood County Public Library or the library here at HCC. It's important to find sources that are written by well-known researchers or institutions. Let's just say you are researching dairy judging and you come across two different essays. The first is written by Dr. Catherine Knowlton, who you find out is a dairy judging professor at Virginia Tech. And the second is Avery King, who is a 4-H'er and has only been judging for around 3 years. You will probably want to use Dr. Knowlton's essay because she's not only a well-known researcher, but her research is supported by Virginia Tech. So how exactly do you determine an author's credibility? Well, first you can look up the author, determine if he or she has written any other articles. You can also see his or her activity level within the field and the topic of the source. And you can find an institution or company which supports his or her research. Let's just say you found a couple different essays and a couple different authors. The first is Charlotte Cook, who's a high school student at Appalachian Christian Academy. And the second is Dr. Bethany Flatt, a professor of animal science at Cornell University. While both are on the same topic, it's pretty evident that the credibility will go to Dr. Flatt, as she's not only supported by an institution, but has a lot of research work in that field. One great way to know your source is both credible and accurate is to use peer-reviewed sources. According to Alabama A&M University, a peer-reviewed source is a source that goes through a rigorous review process before publication. It's edited by multiple individuals and is both credible and accurate. Peer-reviewed sources are typically in-depth, and they're very valuable to research for a specific topic. Let's just say you had an article that you wanted to get published. It would first have to be reviewed by many of your peers, and then, and only then, could it be published. Before using a source, you also need to make sure that that source is relevant to your topic. Here's some questions you can ask yourself to determine a source's relevancy. Does the source provide an answer to a question that I have asked myself while researching, or that others may ask while reading my essay? Does the source discuss specific data with supported evidence which relate to my points and thesis? Can I use this data to drive my main points and effectively provide supporting evidence? And is the source credible? And would I feel comfortable citing these authors? It's important to use your sources properly in order to accurately relay your information. Here's how you can express your information and avoid plagiarism through proper citations. It's important to use your sources properly in order to avoid plagiarism and accurately express your information. One way you can do this is by summarizing. This is giving an overview of the source using your own words. Let's just say you read an article on A2A2 beta casein in dairy cattle. Here's how you would summarize it. In an essay by Dr. Coleman of the University of Tennessee, findings are presented which prove the existence of A2 beta casein. Researchers found that the casein was present in dairy products from cows having only A2A2 genetics. You're including everything that's highly important: who conducted the study, where the study was conducted, and what the findings were. But you're not using the exact words of the author. You can also quote. Now this is directly using the words of the author. According to Dr. Coleman of the University of Tennessee, we found that cattle can have a certain genetic trait called A2A2. The A2A2 genes allow for only A2 beta casein to be present in the milk. You then put a in-text citation right after the quote, and that's extremely important to avoid plagiarism. You also can paraphrase, and this is rephrasing the text into your own words. Let's rephrase the quote from the previous example. Researchers found that dairy cattle are able to present only A2 beta casein in their milk if they have A2A2 genetics. You're not directly using the words of Dr. Coleman, but you are rephrasing it into your own words. With any type of information expression that you have gained from a source, it's important to put an in-text citation afterwards. Don't be a bandit and steal others' words. It's important to avoid plagiarism through making sure you use your own words, unless of course you're quoting. Also, give proper credit to the authors by using both in text and in citations. Researchers work hard to get their research published, and thus they deserve their credit anytime you use them as a resource. So how exactly do you cite your sources? For APA in-text citations, you're going to put the author's last name and the date of publication. If your source has two authors, you put both of their last names with an and in the middle, followed by the date of publication. And if your source has three or more authors, you're going to put the first author's last name, followed by et al., and the date of publication. For APA in-text citations, if your source is a book, you're going to put the author's last name and first two initials, the date of publication, the title of the article with the first letter capitalized, and that's in italics, and then last the publisher. If your source was an online scholarly journal article, you're going to put the author's last name and first two initials, along with the date of publication. Then you're going to put the title, except this time it's not in italics, but still only the first letter is capitalized. You then put the journal in italics, the volume and issue numbers, the page numbers, and the link or DOI where you retrieved your source. And if you need any more information on citing for either APA or MLA style, you can go to the Purdue Wise Owl Online Writing Lab. That's a great resource to help you through citing and avoiding plagiarism. In summary, we have discussed how to avoid fake news, how to find credible, relevant sources which relate to your main essay topic, and how to use sources properly to avoid plagiarism. So how do you carry out academic research? Well, following these steps and avoiding fake news, finding credible, relevant sources, and using your sources properly can make academic research a lot easier to navigate. Here are my references for this presentation. Thank you for listening.